Welcome to GrassRoot, Ohio. Conversations with everyday people working on important issues here in Columbus and all around Ohio. I'm Carolyn Harding, and today I'm talking with Pam Libby, Julia King, and Lindsay Layland. Two are Native Ohioans, one is Native Alaskan. Two migrate to Bristol Bay every June and July, one is there year-round. Two are my biological sisters, and one is an activist organizer sister. All three are commercial salmon fishermen or women in the Bristol Bay, and all three stand to Stop Pebble Mine. Pam Harding Libby was born and raised in Worthington, Ohio. She moved to Alaska in May 1978 when she married Jim Libby, a lifelong commercial salmon fisherman from Bristol Bay. She spent the last 42 summers commercial salmon setnet fishing on Ekuk Beach in the Nushagak district of Bristol Bay. Next year marks the 60th anniversary of the Libby family fishing together from mid-June to mid-July, harvesting thousands of pounds of salmon, even in the midst of this worldwide pandemic. At 66, she considers herself a badass fisher grandma. She's grateful to be part of her 4-generation family fishing business and is optimistic that the fight will prevail. Julia King grew up in Worthington, Ohio, spending summers at Lake Erie. And in 1983, after spending a year teaching in the South Pacific, she flew home through Alaska and worked on the slime line at a salmon processing plant in Dillingham, where her sister spent her summers fishing. The next year, she went back and crewed on a commercial salmon drift boat for the summer, and has spent the last 30 years, minus a few, set netting on the beach with Pam and their family. She received her master's in education from the Ohio State University and started teaching in Southern Cal, in Corona, California, where she continues to teach today. Fishing has been her summer job of passion. Lindsay Layland is from Dillingham, Alaska. She is a lifelong fisherman with a great respect for the waters, lands, and cultures of the Bristol Bay region. She is committed to community engagement and preparing and encouraging our future generations to lead empowered, sustainable, productive lives. She is the Deputy Director of the United Tribes of Bristol Bay. Welcome, all four of you.
Welcome.
All right, welcome to GrassRoot. You all four have a connection with Dillingham, Alaska. So let's just go one by one and hear, how did you end up in Dillingham and how did you get involved in the salmon industry? Let's start with you, Lindsay.
Yeah, so I actually grew up here in Dillingham. I was born in Anchorage, but I was raised here in Dillingham with my family. And the year that I was born, my parents bought a commercial fishing setnet permit. So basically since birth, I've been involved in the commercial fishery and lived here. My family has been involved in subsistence fishing and commercial fishing and hunting and a lot of the activities and outdoor resources that we have available to us. So Dillingham has always been a big part of my life, and I've commercially fished here every summer of my life, at least since I was a young teenager, and super grateful for the opportunity to continue the fishing family business, as well as, of course, the advocacy work that I do. And I just wanted to clarify for any folks listening, in the beginning you mentioned that your sisters are Native Ohioans and that I'm a Native Alaskan, and while I am from Alaska, I just want to distinguish for folks that I'm actually not Alaska Native. I have Portuguese and Finnish roots. I'm not an indigenous person to this region. So while I was born and raised here, I'm not Native Alaskan in that sense.
I understand, thanks. And and you got involved in the fishing industry because of family?
Yeah, so my dad, of course, I worked for my dad as a teenager and through high school and college years to pay my way through school. And then I was fortunate enough to, in my early 20s, take over the fishing business from him. I bought my own setnet skiff and kind of started hiring my own crew. And my dad has since kind of retired, semi-retired from the fishing business, and I've taken over for him. And now I work with my brother, who's my fishing partner, and we each operate a setnet skiff, actually just north of the Ekuk Beach. We fish in a stretch called Combine. So that's where my my kind of origin for fishing came. And then I have participated in other fisheries as well, including some longlining in Area M and some seining in Area M and in Kodiak Island as well. So it's been, yeah, fishing's been a big part of my family for my whole life, and my brothers and mine now into adulthood, which is such a pleasure.
Nice. How about you, Julie?
Well, fishing and family definitely come hand in hand for me as well. My sister had come up to Alaska, and I heard the stories. And when I had an opportunity in '83 to fly into Anchorage and then Dillingham, I got an opportunity to see the slime line, see the processing of all the resources that go all over the world and in food form. And that was a great education. Then I got to be on a drift boat with my brother-in-law. And what an experience that was, to live the life of a drift fisher woman for a year. And then I got the greatest opportunity of going on to the beach and set netting with my sister Pam and her young boys at the time. And they've grown up and now are grown men fishermen, and got to fish on the beach in Ekuk. Got to bring up my kids when they were a baby, and then as young kids, and my son now gets to drift in the Nushagak as well. And so my experience has been because of family, because of connections, and the love I have for being off the grid and experiencing the tundra and the amazing tides that the Noosh provides.
Excellent. And you, Pam, I know you have a long history with Dillingham too.
Well, I'll just speak as a young girl from Columbus, Ohio, going up to Alaska. It was quite a shock in 1978. I arrived on the beach where my in-laws were running the sites, and the first tide that we had over 4,000 red salmon in the nets. And I thought I had come from Ohio to some planet. I had no idea where I was. So I've come a long way since 1978, and I am the matriarch of my family on the beach. This was our 43rd setnet summer. I fish on Ekuk Beach, and unlike Lindsay, who skiff fishes, we set net with trucks and come-alongs, and it's a totally different type of fishery, but one that lends itself really well to families and multi-generation. I teach my granddaughters, I have 4 granddaughters and 1 grandson. I'm teaching them the responsibility of being good fishers, and it's really fun, and it's really hard work.
Yeah, I wanted to go on into that. This is hard physical labor, and it doesn't, it's not 9 to 5. So can you tell us, it seems that you're all 4 women, 3, sorry. And I understand there's quite a few women fishermen. I guess do you call yourself fishermen or fisherwomen? Or is it just generic? It doesn't matter to me.
I call myself a fisherman. I don't have any, I mean, I know that some women do call themselves fisherwomen, which is a great empowerment for them, but for me it's a gender neutral term.
Either way, huh? Sounds good. So so what is the ratio of women up there, especially set netting and doing what you do as well, Lindsay? What you do, set netting?
Yeah, I set net as well. As Pam said, a little bit of a different type. I fish out of a boat along the beach versus with a truck pulling the net up the beach. So it's a little bit of a different technique, but we are both tethered to the beach, which is where the term set net comes from. Our net is set rather than drifting in the current. And it is a lot of hard work. It's definitely a big chunk of physical labor, which I think, as you two can probably relate to, we just kind of learn how to do when we're young, and that's the expectation and the standard, and we're used to it. You know, I don't know now what the ratio of men to women is. I know that historically set netting has been more of it was more of like a woman's or the home job, you know, doing the subsistence and setting the net outside the cabin while the men were out drifting. And that has, of course, dramatically evolved over the years. There are a handful, though, of women, female captains in the industry that has just continuously grown over the last decade. And I have quite a few friends who captain their own operations and drift boats as well. I'm one of the only female captains on my beach, but that's not to say that women aren't increasingly engaging in the fishery and taking a bigger role in running and owning and operating some businesses.
What have you seen, Julie and Pam?
I've seen over the years a greater number of women leading out and being the permit holders, which means that they're in charge of the delivery and making sure the decision making of what's happening with the tides and the currents. So it's exciting for me. It's not unusual to see plenty of women hustling on the beach.
And it's a 24-hour process, right, Pam?
Right. We don't go by the clock. Well, we go by the tide. And we set our nets out, depending on how high the tide is, at whatever time it is. So usually we'll have a week of night fishing and a week of day fishing, and then it just keeps rotating based on the tide. So we fish night or day. In Alaska, there's just a few hours that it's actually dark. So that is an advantage to us. But it taught my kids that, you know, you just handle the job. You be responsible and you get the job done no matter what time it is or how hungry you are. You learn, right, Lindsay, you learn to be responsible for your product. And that is what we all strive to be, is extremely responsible for this priceless resource that we all are a part of.
I'd like to ask Lindsay, you work for the United Tribes of Bristol Bay. You're not an Indigenous woman, you're an ally. And how did you get involved, and what do you do with for your organization?
Yeah, so, well, I guess I'll first start with just a little bit of background about, you know, who the United Tribes of Bristol Bay are. United Tribes of Bristol Bay, or UTBB, is a tribal government consortium that has 15 member tribes throughout the Bristol Bay region. And those 15 member tribes make up about 80% of the in-region population of Bristol Bay. And our mission or our goal is to protect the indigenous way of life of the Yupik, Alutiiq, and Dena'ina people of Southwest Alaska, all of whom make up some of our member tribes. And I got involved in this work. You know, UTBB's mission, in addition to protecting the way of life, is into, you know, preventing and stopping these hard rock, large scale metallic sulfide mines on like the Pebble project that we'll talk more about. But I got into this work because I've always known about the threat of some of these massive development projects that could come into our region and disrupt critical salmon habitat and traditional culture and the lands and waters that the people of this region depend upon. So it just kind of came to be that when I moved back to Dillingham after college, after working a job at our local health corporation, I found an employment opportunity with the tribal group here with UTBB and applied, and it kind of worked out that I was able to fill this role. And so for the last 4 years, I've been engaged with tribal leaders here in the Bristol Bay region, just working to protect their lands and waters that are under threat by this development. So that's of course a very brief overview of how I got engaged, but I've always known about this fight and this effort simply because it's been looming over our heads since I was a kid. But to this point, yeah, just really grateful to have the opportunity to know and work alongside with some incredible leadership of Indigenous folks here in the region who are working really hard to protect their communities and their histories and culture.
Well, I'm as in my research, I'm seeing that the tribal communities and the commercial fishermen and women and the science communities have really been combining and connecting and being allies in this fight against Pebble Mine. And let's break down what Pebble Mine is so that the person out there, it's such a euphemistic word, Pebble Mine. It's just like this sweet little Pebble Mine, you know, it's like, so let's break it down and tell folks what it is. And Julie and Pam aren't activists, but they've been involved in fishing and they've been in that area. So I wouldn't mind having one of you guys just tell me tell the folks what you know what's going on with Pebble Mine right now, or what it is.
Well, I'll launch this little definition because my family and I have been flying right over the region that the Pebble Mine would go into for 43 years in our Cessna 185. And it is right at the headwaters of where all this pristine ecosystem and the salmon run start or finish. And the devastation to that region, and your listeners probably, you know, haven't actually seen the area. I'll tell you, when you fly over it and you imagine what it will look like and where it's placed, it just doesn't make any sense that anyone would consider putting a mine there and messing with this sustainable resource that we've had for so many years.
What's your take, Julie?
Well, my take is copper and gold can be mined in many places, and to think about this being the only, or this is a optimal place to mine this in this area that this the only wild salmon run left travels to and disrupt what we have, the only precious run that we have left. To even have this in a discussion, it seems ludicrous. And you know, they talk about the jobs that we produced, but looking at what the jobs really produced versus all the people that work in the salmon industry and the indigenous people that fish for their livelihood, it doesn't make sense.
No. And before I get to Lindsay, I just want to let our folks know that this is GrassRoot Ohio Radio. I'm Carolyn Harding, and we're WGRN.org. We stream worldwide. And I'm talking with Julia King, Pam Libby, and Lindsay Layland. All three of them are commercial fisher women and men. Well, no, not men. Fishermen women. You can call them fisherwomen or fishermen, whatever you like. And they're in the fight to protect Bristol Bay from the Pebble Mine that is in the works. And folks have been fighting it for quite a few years. Lindsay, why don't you tell us a little bit more, because you're working on this. This is your career. Tell folks a little more what they need to know about Pebble Mine.
Yeah, well, to start, I guess, with the most simplest explanation, there are, despite the fact that the proposed Pebble Mine is continually growing into a national and international issue, many folks still don't know what it is. So, the term Pebble Mine sounds like, sounds like it would be a mine that mines pebble. That doesn't make any sense, right? But the Pebble Mine is a copper, molybdenum, and gold metallic sulfide mine, a proposed mine anyway. There's a large deposit at the headwaters of Bristol Bay. And Pebble, actually, the name comes from Pebble Beach in California, because folks looked at this landscape that the proposed mine site is, and they thought that it looked like a golf course. like Pebble Beach. And so it's named the Pebble Mine because of this beautiful rolling hills and valleys and ecosystems and tundra landscape where the mineral deposit sits just north of Lake Iliamna. So the Pebble Mine is a proposed massive large-scale gold, copper, molybdenum mine that, if developed, would be among the largest open pit mines in the nation, and if expanded beyond even further, eventually in the world. Currently one of the biggest elements of this is that it poses a tremendous threat to the downstream life, and that is human life, aquatic life, wildlife, aviation. There's a lot of elements that this really pristine ecosystem in Southwest Alaska at the headwaters of, as Pam mentioned, the Bristol Bay watershed, the lakes and rivers and tributaries that drain from that area contribute to the world's greatest wild sockeye salmon return, that we've had for centuries, and the last remaining one. And so there's a lot at stake for a project of this size to go forward with. If it were developed, it would be, it would include a lot of big elements like a 700 foot tall tailings dam, which a tailings dam contains toxic waste and mineral waste that comes from the ground after they expose minerals and sulfide to the air, and they have to make a big dam that's going to store that material forever, which is a hard concept for us to grasp.
Forever.
It's in a really ecologically sensitive area. There's a lot of measures. They would have like a 340 megawatt power plant, which is like as big as the city of Fairbanks. And it's just this really intense infrastructure that has big potential to damage the surrounding environment.
So this Pebble Mine is proposed by a Canadian firm, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the company that owns it, the Pebble Partnership, is owned by Northern Dynasty Minerals, which is a Canada-based firm.
Okay, and how's your governor, Pam? Is your governor for this, or is the governor against it? Do you know?
Yeah, the governor is very pro the Pebble Mine. He had a conversation with President Trump on Air Force One a few weeks ago, actually in June, for 20 minutes. And then things started rolling for this project. So our governor is very pro-development.
Okay, and so is Donald Trump, right?
Right.
He's pro Pebble Mine. He's also pro drilling in the Arctic Refuge.
And the Tongass rainforest.
Right. Okay. So where are we now in the fight? I know that there was an environmental impact statement released recently by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and where are we, and how much power do the people have to stop this through the EPA? Let's just break it down, not too complicated, but tell us where we are right now with this fight. Lindsay.
Yeah, so the EIS that you mentioned, the environmental impact statement, that comes at the end of the permitting process that Pebble began once President Trump took office. So once Trump was elected, the Pebble Partnership took that opportunity to finally, after 20 years of saying they would, of finally applying for a federal permit to develop this project. Fast forward 2.5, 3 years where we are now, through a really fast-tracked permitting process under the current administration, the final EIS was released for the Pebble Partnership and the proposed Pebble Mine, and that final environmental impact statement was pretty slim on proper detail and scientific analysis, and it didn't have all of the elements that you would typically see in an environmental impact statement for a project of this size. So it was very, very concerning that experts and scientific and geologists and mining executives and tribal leaders, they've all reviewed that document, and comparing it to former EISs or final EISs say that it's simply not adequate. how this relates to the EPA is that the Environmental Protection Agency actually has what's called 404C veto power or veto authority under the Clean Water Act. That section of law gives the EPA the authority to essentially withdraw this wetlands area from development for this type of project because of the adverse impacts that it would have for the surrounding environment. So the voice of the people right now is pretty huge, or it could be, and it continues to be. For 20 years, the people of the region and the Pacific Northwest and across the country have been verbalizing their opposition to this project in support of Bristol Bay protections. And that's really why there hasn't been a mine built right now, because of people like you and your sisters and the indigenous folks here in Bristol Bay who have been fighting and standing up year after year and saying, we don't want it, we don't want it, and fighting for their way of life and their jobs and their culture. So for people to right now ask the EPA, provide comment, provide written letter, contact leadership and say, we need the EPA to step in and invoke what's called 404C veto authority with the Pebble permit is critical.
Lindsay, we have like 2 minutes left. What can people like Julie in California, Pam in Alaska, we have our social contacts, me in Ohio. I know your website, United Tribe of Bristol Bay, utbb.org.
Yeah, utbb.org.
Has a lot of information and a lot of asks of what people can do to really protect Bristol Bay. What else can folks like us do?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I know we'll keep this really short. utbb.org is a great resource. There are other pages like Trout Unlimited, Save Bristol Bay, Defend Bristol Bay that you can find on Facebook, who are also going to have all these links and resources available to direct people where to go to take action. And I know this sounds like a pitch, but donating to these organizations is always helpful when it comes down the line if we're going to have to engage in a legal battle or we're going to have to engage in grassroots organizing to continue this fight. So those efforts, among others, are huge.
All right. This could go, we could have an engaging conversation probably for 2 hours, but I have my last question to you all three is farmed salmon versus wild salmon. What's the big deal?
We have a saying, friends don't let friends eat farmed salmon. And I think that basically says it all.
I think so too. Well, listen, thank you so much. Let's all stand up. We'll fight back. We'll share this with all our friends, and it'll be on our podcast on Apple. It'll be on YouTube under GrassRoot Ohio. And let's get the word out, and let's make sure that Pebble Mine does not pollute beautiful Bristol Bay. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. Say hi to Dillingham.
It doesn't look like it's, don't tell me it's not. Oh, here it is. I thought